At 6:47 a.m., in the faint light of dawn over the Taiwan Strait, the destroyer USS William P. Lawrence activated its automatic identification system, an act no different than throwing down a direct challenge in the enemy's face. At an airbase 53 miles away, alarm sirens screamed through the morning like the howl of war. Two J-16 pilots sprang from their tea table, eyes still heavy with sleep, but bodies moving like clockwork. They didn't need orders. They didn't need to ask why. Muscle remembered, the mind calculated, and the heart? It was already prepared to play the deadly game. While the ground was still cold, the jet engines roared to life like unleashed beasts. The air trembled. Every human heartbeat seemed to sync with the turbine's spinning fury. The PL-10 and PL-15 missiles were unlocked, silently making one thing clear: this was no game. And then it hits you, this isn't a drill. This is a haunting debut to a showdown where every second could decide the fate of an entire region. The J-16 quietly activated its Type 1475 radar, an electronic ghost. No glow, no roar, yet it sliced through the air like an invisible blade. Aboard the Lawrence, the SLQ-32 system strained to its limits, capturing every electromagnetic pulse. Over 150 kilometers away, two dead dots were closing in fast. Every passing second was a life-or-death calculation. The enemy didn't launch missiles, they didn't have to. All they needed was to prove they could, and that alone was terrifying. This was a clash of technology where skill and silence were the loudest roar. At just 500 feet above the sea, the J-16 fighter tore through the air at 450 knots, rushing in like a living bullet. It wasn't carrying anti-ship missiles, but it brought a message louder than any launch. I can destroy you if I choose to. Inside the cockpit, the targeting display lit up, lock-on confirmed. Data from the WMD-7 pod streamed directly into the pilot's helmet, display the image of the Lawrence crystal clear, as if seen through binoculars. Every hull number, every weapon station, every crew member on deck. Modern military technology doesn't just see it, understands, analyzes, and decides all in the span of a single breath. Meanwhile, the American warship's combat systems roared to life. Aegis calculated firing solutions, ESSMs stood by, and the Sea Whiz locked on automatically. Everything simmered just beneath the surface of calm. One wrong blink, one twitch out of sync, and this entire destroyer could become a plume of smoke rising over the strait. But the pilot held his course precise, like an artist dancing on the edge of a blade. The roar of the Saturn AL-31F engines swept over the deck, shaking the very air. In that moment, art, technology, and war fused into one, and the world held its breath. A fresh J-16 thundered in from the mainland, full fuel, sharp-eyed pilot, carrying with it something the crew aboard the Lawrence was starting to recognize all too well. A performance choreographed down to the second, down to the nautical mile. At the same time, the ship's radar picked up a massive steel silhouette moving ahead the Huff, China's most advanced PLA Navy destroyer, closing in from the sea. In the air, the J-16 dropped to just 200 feet, skimming the Lawrence's deck like a wind of death, while up ahead, the Huff locked its Type 346A radar onto the ship, a three-dimensional pincer move, tightening with surgical precision. Beneath the surface lurked the most unsettling assumption. A Type 093 submarine could be tracking them. On the Aegis display, the tactical situation shifted by the second layers of threats stacking from above, across the waves and deep beneath the ocean's surface. At 7:52 a.m., the silent chess match reached its final move. A J-16 came screaming in from the bow, flying at just 120 feet too low, too close, too reckless. Almost simultaneously, another closed in from the stern at 400 feet, boxing the USS Lawrence into a three-dimensional pincer hold. Inside the combat control room, data streams flashed red, alarms escalated, and the Sea Whiz spun its barrels with a high-pitched whir of electric motors, heating up just one trigger away from opening fire. This was no longer a show of force, it was a live-fire test of willpower. In a moment where even the second hand seemed to freeze, everyone held their breath. Then, with a sudden sharp bank, both J-16S screamed upward, climbing fast, vanishing beyond Sea Whiz range. The showdown ended without a single shot fired, but it left behind the breathless echo of having stared over the edge of war. In a world where every second is a test of strategy, restraint, not firepower, has become the most dangerous and sophisticated weapon of all. And if restraint is the most advanced weapon, then the war between Russia and Ukraine reveals the other side of the scale, where reason is replaced by firepower and consequences are no longer hypothetical. At exactly 6:47 a.m. local time on the 23rd of April, 2025, just moments after the first aircraft took off, a thunderous explosion shattered the stillness of the night at Engels 2 Air Base, Russia's symbol of untouchable power. Thick black smoke rose into the sky, and flames raged through a site once deemed an impenetrable fortress. Ukraine had done the unthinkable, launched a direct strike on Russia's most heavily guarded airbase, the very launch point for strategic bombers armed with nuclear missiles. The world was stunned. This wasn't just an attack, it was a bold declaration. Nowhere is safe anymore. The people aren't really living anymore, they're running. It's no longer about thunderous explosions or military convoys flexing their power. What's making Russian commanders stiffen with unease are the invisible strikes so precise. It's chilling guided by satellites, artificial intelligence, and real-time targeting algorithms. In Operation Spiderweb, Ukraine didn't just strike fixed targets. They tracked refueling aircraft, ammo trucks pulling out of depots, radars just powering on. Each drone was an invisible blade finding the soft spot and driving straight in. The sound wasn't booming. It was dry. Sharp, like metal slamming into concrete. Each explosion didn't just destroy equipment, it triggered a wave of fear, rippling from the command room through the entire defense system. How did the attackers know exactly which vehicle was carrying fuel? Why did they strike at the one moment of vulnerability? The answer doesn't lie in the weapons. It lies in the strategy specialized, calculated, cold, and not off by even a single second. And it's that perfection that makes modern warfare so suffocating. Not because of intensity, but because you no longer know when you'll be attacked, only that when it happens, you won't be ready. The small UAVs were cold, silent like needles, driven straight into the enemy's psyche. No roaring engines, no flashing lights, just thick, heavy air and a creeping sense of unease spreading through skies they once believed were untouchable. What terrified the enemy wasn't the noise, it was the deafening silence. No warning, no time to react, only consequences. A fuel depot in flames. A radar vanished from the map, an aircraft locked onto before it ever left the ground targeted from deep within the shadows. Every launch was a statement. Modern warfare doesn't need to be loud. It just needs the right timing, the right altitude, the right blind spot, and the kind of breath-stealing precision the enemy is forced to swallow silently and with quiet respect. No longer were the strikes blindly aimed at fixed structures now. The targets were alive, moving, shifting by the hour. Parked aircraft, refueling trucks, mobile radar units. Each one was tracked, pinpointed, and locked in by a network of sensors, satellite imagery, and navigation algorithms, refined to a scalpel-sharp level of precision. With danger closing in, small UAVs skimmed just above the ground, silent, hugging the terrain like part of the landscape, then suddenly surged upward at lethal range. No warning. Just an abrupt explosion ripping through the air, the screech of twisting metal, and columns of smoke rising from what, only minutes earlier, had been strategic military assets. Every move unfolded with second-by-second precision, as if the operator were conducting a silent symphony of casualties. The most terrifying part wasn't the destruction, it was the chilling sense of being watched, hunted, without ever knowing. No one knew where the UAV would come from, or when, but when it did, every defense system reacted just one beat too late. Stunned by the coordination, awed by the precision, and chilled to the bone by the silence soaked in deadly intent. This is no longer Warrett's neurosurgery performed on a military map. Russia once believed it would always have time to retaliate, that Ukraine could intercept missiles mid-air, but never reach the launch sites themselves. But that illusion was ripped apart in silence. Ukraine no longer waits for the missiles to take off, it strikes at the source. Direct hits on airbases, refueling stations, ammo depots, and logistical hubs, the invisible arteries that are vital to sustain any war machine. No need to destroy the aircraft hiding in reinforced bunkers. Just sever the fuel lines, take out the rearm points, and everything grinds to a halt. Each strike is a cold, surgical, cut-precise, bloodless, yet paralyzing. The missiles can't launch. The crews can't take. The only sound is the sudden blast from behind when no one expected the UAV had already slipped in, locked on, and triggered. Every strike is a cold orchestration, timed down to the second, leaving no room for error. Respect for the skill, awe at the technology, and a shiver at the absolute initiative. Ukraine isn't just striking back, they are suffocating every breath of the enemy's war machine from the inside out. Plumes of black smoke rising from the fuel depot, explosions echoing through the night, and the sound of metal fracturing cut straight into Moscow's defensive resolve. There's no denying it anymore. Something has pierced through their deepest layer of protection. While the Russian Ministry of Defense claims to have shot down hundreds of UAVs, the reality tells a different story. The very place that was supposed to be safest has been breached. Even the most advanced air defense systems like the S-400 and Pantsir lagged a beat, outmaneuvered by small, low-flying targets. This isn't a war of direct assaults, it's neurosurgery on a battlefield. Cold, silent, and unnervingly precise. Stunned by the silence, laced with deadly intent. Hair raised by that chilling sense of too late to react. Every second of delay means another system wiped out. This isn't just about technology, it's about coordination, down to each breath, each moment. And Russia, whether they admit it or not, is being lead-trapped in a game of chess where they no longer move first. As the Tu-95 and Tu-160 bombers were quietly withdrawn from Engels 2 and Dyagilev, no official announcement was made. Only an eerie silence remained, punctuated by midnight flights, slipping eastward, an apparent strategic repositioning, thinly veiling what was, in truth, a retreat. But everyone understood. This wasn't initiative. This was a reactionary response to an invisible threat, slicing deep into the nervous system of Russia's war machine. There are no safe air bases anymore. No more sense of being out of reach. Tiny UAVs, launched from afar, slip through every layer of defense, forcing Russia to pull back its strategic assets deep into Siberia, thousands of kilometers away from the front lines.